Hey, what's up, gents?
Yellow.
What's going on?
Give me a second. Change shirts. Be non-island here.
Thank you
Myself.
for keeping the camera off for that, Glenn.
Yeah, you got it. I know you want to see my bod.
Hello, my friends.
Thank you for joining us for the PEBCAK Podcast, a weekly information security show featuring some all-around good people. It is week 26 of 2024. I'm Chris Louie, and happy 4th of July to all our American listeners, so happy birthday, America. For our UK listeners, enjoy working this Thursday and Friday. It's also important to note that we are officially halfway through 2024, so happy second half to everyone.
Unbelievable.
With me, I still do not have my co-host Duke Silver because he's currently stimulating the economy of Southern Europe.
Is it Croatia? Is that where's he at?
I think Croatia is considered Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Right?
Well, we'll let Brian talk about it once he's back on the podcast. You can ask him all the countries he visited.
Yeah.
And we have Glenn Medina, or should we call him Moneybags Glenn, or MBG? He did not care about the deal I sent him yesterday that would save him 20% or more on his Uber rides.
It wasn't or more. It was just 20%. What are you talking about?
So you're not doing the math correctly, Glenn. You're not doing that the life hack.
You buy two for 20% off, right? Two for 50. So it's basically $10 off of each card, right?
So it's
for an Uber ride.
It's $100 worth of credit for $80. So you save $20, but you use the Costco Citibank credit card and you get an additional 4%.
Oh, yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Got to use those credit card hacks, Glenn. That's why I said 20% or more.
Okay. Gotcha.
And then Glenn just blows me off. Like, that's just $20.
Wow. I've seen you waste more than $20 at these adult locations, so don't worry about that. or maybe that's where you spend your $20 that you saved, and you tell Grace you spent the full amount. But in reality, it's a net zero. You're just trying to wiggle your way out of $20 to do something.
Yeah, exactly. So. Something else cost exactly 20. Actually, I don't know how much they cost now because of inflation and everything, but they used to cost $20. But yeah, that's what these are $20 for, Glenn.
Yeah, gotcha.
This is my wife's math too. When we ever plan vacations, it's like, well, we saved $100 here, so we could spend that on this thing now.
So you could spend $5,000 there.
Yeah, exactly. we definitely have way more money now, right? Like that's how it is.
Got this money burning a hole in my pocket.
Yeah.
Well, our guest this week is the returning Stephen Hajny. We got great feedback the last time you were on. So, Stephen, would you like to introduce yourself again?
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that you got great feedback. No, so Stephen Hajny, dad joke connoisseur, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and competitor, or used to be a competitor, and also a principal sales engineer over at Zscaler for healthcare. So I am focused only on healthcare accounts, healthcare providers in particular, and then before that I was at VMware for a long time in EUC doing kind of similar things.
And let's set the record straight. He only goes by Hajny, so you could just remove Steven right now. Chris.
Hajny.
That is true.
That's for the SEO. So when people type in Stephen Hajny into their search engine of choice, it'll flag this podcast. But for now on, we can refer to him as Hajny.
Hey, so I got a question.
In the country.
So in Slack, are you listed as Hajny or are you listed as Stephen Hajny?
I am listed as Stephen Hajny, but
well, then you need to correct that, sir.
I should. Fun fact, though, there's only two of us in the country, and one
in the country.
Yeah. So.
Oh wow.
That is a real thing that we have come to realize. So if you do look me up, you'll probably see me or him.
Good to know that you're killing off your family tree if there's only two of you guys.
It's like Jet Li, right? The Jet Li movie 1, I just go after everybody named the same thing and just go for it.
Or Highlander, there can only be one.
Yeah, or Highlander.
That's awesome. Love it.
And I remember, Stephen, or Hajny, I remember you sent me a screenshot that said one of our customers complimented you on the dad joke, that you are the dad joke person. So you're really building your brand around that.
He is.
It's accurate. It's what I do. I don't do presentations without a dad joke, either ending or starting the presentation. I've told them they would have to throw me off stage physically if I couldn't do a dad joke. So.
I'm sure the audience appreciates it. This week, we're going to talk about Russia, a hospital group that shut down. For our third topic, people are not able to buy a new car, and close with alcohol talk. For our first topic, Russia, our commander-in-chief has completely banned Kaspersky antivirus software in the U.S. for government and consumers with a deadline of September 29th of this year to find alternatives. This ban not only involves the sale of Kaspersky products, but also prevents the company from delivering antivirus and security updates to customers. Now, Kaspersky was already banned in the U.S. federal government and any entities doing business with the government, but this recent crackdown now affects consumers as well. The paranoia that the Russian government will use Kaspersky software as a backdoor is rooted in the 2017 revelation that Kaspersky somehow got a hold of NSA exploits from an entity known as the Equation Group. The U.S. government says that Kaspersky stole those tools, but Kaspersky says their AV software was working as intended and detected the exploit kits and uploaded them to their server for further analysis. And if you don't know, and you've been living under a rock, or you just can't tell, Kaspersky is a Russian software company.
So are you pronouncing Kaspersky incorrectly again, and you're going Kaspersky versus just Kaspersky?
Kaspersky.
Right?
This guy's name, Eugene Kaspersky.
That's just Kaspersky.
Hyundai.
Yeah, let's not go there again. Come on, man.
It is weird, though, right, to think about this, because we saw it with TikTok recently. We also, I know, 5 or 6 years ago when Broadcom was trying to buy a company, they had to move their headquarters out of Singapore to being on U.S. soil because there was some issues there, too, where they felt like, these chips could have, backdoors or something of the sort.
Hardware backdoor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it
so
Qualcomm?
I feel like we're seeing it. I think so.
No, that was Broadcom when they tried to buy Qualcomm. Yeah. Or 3Com. Yeah. Well, I think the reason for that was because Trump denied it, right? Because there were concerns. But I think the bigger thing was just like being able to technically put a U.S. company or a U.S. CEO in jail, right? Let's put it. You have a further reach than trying to arrest someone in a different country that doesn't have any business in the U.S., right? So, other than maybe a subsidiary or something.
Well, it's weird, and I think about video games a lot as a gamer, with like Blizzard going over to China and needing to have almost like a sponsor in China in order for them, and I think that's how China does a lot of their business, is like you have to have a Chinese sponsor company. And I'm like, are we getting to that point eventually here? Like, we're gonna be like, hey, pay us to be your sponsor to sell us software.
It's like Azure. Microsoft Azure in China is run by 21 Vietnet, and Microsoft can't do business directly there. And Apple, I think they technically do, but they have to have all their data centers physically in China, so government can sneak and peek. Actually, there's no sneaking. There's just aversely peeking. There's no hiding it.
Yeah, it's just a weird concept that I feel like gets away from kind of our traditional, like, hey, do whatever you want as long as you don't violate some like antitrust stuff. And so it's interesting to see this kind of come out. I'm not surprised with the U.S. government saying, hey, don't put it on our stuff, right? But I think the hardened stance from a consumer standpoint is interesting. Just use a VPN, I guess, and go download it. I don't know. But here's an antivirus. Go download it via the dark web or something.
At least with antivirus, you can say, well, there's WebRoot, there's Norton. Whether you consider Norton malware or not, it's up to you. But there's other alternatives. There's SentinelOne, there's CrowdStrike. But when you think of like TikTok, one of the most used social media app globally, I think they surpass Meta. Well, they definitely surpass Meta because they can operate in China. Like, there's no real alternative to TikTok. There's like Instagram, but people say that's not as good, the algorithms. not as good. But for Kaspersky, it's like there's just so many alternatives out there. This shouldn't be a problem, I wouldn't think.
I wonder what their market share is too. Like, does anybody know? Because I feel like I've heard that name, but I haven't heard that name since like 2004 or whatever, when everybody's like, what antivirus should I use? And you had like a huge list of like things that you should use, and it was all like trial software.
Wasn't it free at one point in time as well?
That's what I thought, right? Like, that's why I'm like,
been.
What is their market share? Like, what do they actually have going on?
I would say low single-digit percentage.
Yeah.
It's not that much. I think it's more of sending a message too. I think it's partially they want to protect the U.S., but partially they want to send a message. And you can go back and forth. Like, is this a trade problem? Like, we can't sell anything into Russia, so Russia should not be able to sell anything into the U.S.
So what do you think people are going to use? Is it an easy switch?
Norton, of course.
Got it. And who in the federal government?
Norton.
Yeah.
It's gonna be Norton.
Peter Norton.
You just had to go there, did you?
Who was like, wasn't that, it was Symantec, right, who bought them at one point, and then Broadcom bought Symantec, then Symantec said, as they're getting bought, like, oh, we'll just spin off Norton as part of that, because we don't want this consumer stuff in our portal.
Norton LifeLock got spun off.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah. I was in that mix, and what's interesting was the threat research was all on the Norton side, right? So I think they still have to OEM the threat research portion of it to Broadcom now, which is, I don't know how that's done, but it's interesting because a lot of the data that they got was from the consumer side. I think there were more infections on the consumer side than there were on the corporate side. Yeah,
I mean, I could see that in terms of non-sophisticated threats. I would say the consumers get hit way more because that's, in general, consumers don't have that security awareness training. You don't have email filtering. You don't have those first lines of defense. People just click on random things. On the enterprise side, you'll probably see much more sophisticated threats than you would on the consumer side. Fewer number, but greater sophistication.
Well, that's a good point. Do you guys still run antivirus on your machines? Like, I don't. I was just thinking about my personal machine at home. I don't think I even have antivirus on it anymore. Like, I just have like the built-in Windows Defender that it is just like set to don't bother me unless it's critical.
That's because you use Windows. You're one of those guys. You're just like DeLuca. Just like DeLuca. Oh my gosh. I've lost all respect for you Canadians.
Oh man. I have an Android phone, okay? That's only
oh, that makes it even worse now. Come on.
Doubles down on bad ideas.
Doubles down on bad ideas. You Canadians, I swear.
Oh, he's not Canadian. He's Canadian adjacent.
He's Canadian adjacent.
Listen, in the summertime, we might as well be part of Canada with the amount of like people that we have come down from Quebec. So, it's like an invasion every summer.
It's Canadian by osmosis.
Is the national language in Maine Canadian? Is it French Canadian now?
It's just Canadian. Actually, funny story about it. I had two French teachers in high school. One was from Quebec. One was from like classically trained like Paris type French. And they would argue in the hallways all the time about who was right about grammar and pronunciation and everything else. Because I guess it's almost like slang in Canadian French than it is over there in Paris. And so it was great to watch the chaos ensue in the hallways.
Man, talk about a first world problem.
Yeah, right? You said this word wrong, and that's an issue. Like, my students now don't understand, like, crazy.
But you know, it's only a French person that would actually bring up that task and tell them that their enunciation is correctly. Come on, give me a break. Yeah.
So to answer your question, do I run AV software at home? Yes. The Windows Defender stuff is really good for my one Windows machine that I have for testing. And then for everything else in the house, it all goes through a GRE tunnel up to Zscaler. So I get protected at the network layer.
So you still don't have endpoint AV, I guess is what we're still saying here.
No, I block the threats before they even get into the network.
That doesn't block a USB drive or anything like that, Chris. Come on, man.
Well, considering I haven't plugged a USB drive into my computer since 2013, I don't think that's a threat vector that I really have to worry about.
Maybe not you, but what about the kids and the wife when they see those rubber duckies in the parking lot?
They know better. They've been trained.
But let's say that somebody did manage to bring a file in, and it was
I'm bringing
malicious.
a USB.
Yeah. Now
I'm bringing a USB. I'm just gonna start plugging into your house, man.
Well, in theory, that malware has to reach out to a command and control server, at which point I should be able to detect and block it before it downloads the
That's if you
payload.
know about it and it's been classified. What about unknown and SSL decryption and all that? See, and it's sitting in a OneDrive that's not scanned or anyway or not decrypted. So there's still ways around that, Chris. Let's get through that right now.
Yeah, there's always ways around it, Glenn.
Yeah.
Architecture
Layers,
here we come.
layers, Chris. Layers.
Not let
just
Glenn
like an
into my
ogre.
house. Physical layer 1 protection. Just lock Glenn out.
Physical security.
That's my defense.
Layers, just like an ogre, Chris. Layers
And onions.
and onions. Yeah.
All right, for our second topic, this will be our ransomware story of the week. Since we have Hajni on and he has a unique perspective on healthcare, we're going to talk about the ransomware attack against Ascension Healthcare. We briefly mentioned it a few weeks ago where Ascension runs a number of hospitals and they were completely taken offline by this ransomware attack. The ransomware group responsible for this attack is Black Basta, an offshoot of the now defunct Conti gang. We now have more information about this particular attack, and surprising absolutely nobody, the initial attack vector was, drumroll please, a user at Ascension Healthcare downloading and running a malicious file.
Yep. That's a thing that happened. Yeah. So it's not surprising at all, really, that that's the vector. I feel like we still see so much social engineering and phishing campaigns around that type of stuff. And I have the pleasure of traveling the United States and speaking at a lot of different events. And it's definitely still a mindset, like, change to think about anything but that traditional, like, security of, like, oh, we have a firewall. And, like, even vendors aside, like, we have a firewall and that, like, keeps all the bad guys out. And then maybe we're running some kind of, like, antivirus, and surely that's all we need because nobody's attacking healthcare customers. I think that's what I said last time I was on, too, is that, like, it used to be that hack, and Glenn, you wouldn't have heard this most likely, but like I used to do a little dabbling in black hat hacking back in my college days, and it was always seen like on the forums, like, hey, healthcare is off limits, like you don't attack those people, that somebody could die, like that's not good, like it could be your mom, your sister, your brother, your kid, what have you. And we've seen that shift, and I think that like healthcare hasn't caught up to that shift yet, and they're still struggling with like that mindset. I talked to a room full of people not that long ago, probably maybe a month ago, in which somebody said, hey, has anybody found out a good solution to just like turn the internet off when there's an incident? That was like word for word what they said to me. It was like, can we just turn the internet off? And I was like, that's scary. Like,
Kill
what
switch.
about
Like kill
Yeah,
DPS?
I was like, what
Core
about
router.
patients? And they're like, well, we have and somebody else spoke up like, well, we have a policy that we give the stroke unit 90 seconds before we ever have to shut the internet off, because it could be like life threatening. And I was like, why don't you just contain it at the source? Like, why don't you just say, hey, look, like this machine is compromising other machines, and like we're just gonna like kill that network and like not allow people to like get anywhere else on the network. But it's still just this like mindset of like, no, it's an all or nothing. Like there is no such thing as segmentation. It's like, oh no, like you just shut it off to everybody. So
It's like you kill the
a
patient to
wild
destroy
thing.
the cancer. It's like, congratulations, you destroyed the cancer, but you've also killed the patient at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. It's a wild concept. And so I presented again not that long ago, probably 2 weeks ago, right before I went on my travel hiatus, as I'm calling it, the summer of Hajni, where I stay at my house and be miserable in the heat. And I was talking to somebody and I was like, look, like this is just a mindset shift. And they said, yeah, the other people who've been at my company have been there for like 30 years. I've been there for like 3. I know that it's a mindset shift, but the people who've been there for like 30 years don't want to actually change anything. They're just like, they think that that they're secure enough. And I think that this shows that security awareness training, right? Who
It's
actually
an
pays attention
evolution.
to it.
Yeah, oh my God.
Exactly.
This is like you've gone, I think the term is native, where you think you're good and you're just not, and you're just blind to everything
Just
that's
complacent.
Yeah, that's just terrible. And in security, if you're complacent for a month or two, you're already left behind. You got to
If
stay
you're
up.
complacent for like a day, you're behind. There's just so many threats out there every day, and people always trying new and novel ways to get in.
Yeah, it's scary. And like I find that, so I actually write a healthcare newsletter for the company, and we send it out to customers and prospects and all the other stuff. Just I think it's important to like do a cybersecurity news roundup, right? Monthly is what I do. And what the HHS has said recently, the HIPAA Journal reported it, that there's been 55 breaches or reported breaches within the last month. And it's down a little bit, but it's still 22% like year over year increased. And most of them, if not 98% of them, are all like network phishing related. Like it's not that hackers like Glenn are going into Chris's house and plugging in a USB drive. Like it's like, hey, like just click on this link and see what happens. You know, oh, you owe us some money. It's just
the nurse or the doctor.
Yeah.
Or they come in through the VPN.
Yeah.
Tail as all this time. It's like there's certain things, like there's nothing new, but there's also lots of new ways people are trying to get in.
Yeah. I mean, I talked to somebody who we saw some botnet activity and we asked about it, and they said, well, that could be just a legitimate website. And I was like, no, it doesn't. That it was like frogturtle.com. Like it was some like weird URL that would never be a legitimate website. And I was like, I don't think that's the case. Like, well, we should contact that user because I think they're remote and they could be trying to do some public surfing. And I'm like, no, like this is an issue. Like we are clearly seeing this as a command and control thing. Like, and we
take
blocked
5 seconds to run it through
happy.
VirusTotal.
Yeah, right. Like, and they're like, "Well, our other antivirus and stuff didn't catch it." And I'm like, "Well, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you can either believe it or not." But I think
is it Kaspersky?
Was that Russian backdoor that we didn't know about? Thankfully for that GRE tunnel we have at my house. No, so
was the website not the FSB.com?
Yeah. I think it's a case of really changing mindsets in healthcare. And it's really hard. Like I said, it's a lot of kind of, I don't want to say legacy thinking, but old school thinking of, hey, we have this thing and we protected it with a moat and there's a treasure chest in the middle and we just that's all we need, and not thinking that people can now build bridges or have boats that can get through it or something of the sort.
Or a jetpack can fly over it now.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah, I just don't understand how people can stay in our industry and not keep up to date with the things that are going on. It's just I'm just amazed at that they think they can sit and be comfortable and probably think they're in a retirement job, right? And it's like, this is not a retirement job by any stretch.
Yeah, you always need new people, new blood coming in just to shake things up, not get complacent.
Yeah, that's why I love the idea of pen testing, right? Like doing the red team exercises. Even when I was a customer, we had one that we did, and I was in financial or fintech, and one of our help desk folks who have domain admin privileges left his computer unlocked in the office. And so people could just the guy, the pen tester who was on site, and we all knew who he was, but the rest of the employees didn't know, and he was just checking some things out, right? He'd go check the doors if they were locked, look around to see if passwords on keyboards. Walked into the office, and I guess none of us were there. And this guy had just left his computer unlocked, and he created himself a domain admin account and got access and put some files on some servers. And then when we got the report, he's like, "Here's what I did and how I did it." And I was like, "Great."
Oh boy.
Basic 101 security.
Yeah.
Lock
Fail.
your machine when you walk away.
Control L, whatever, or Windows key L for
Windows
us.
L, yeah.
And let me get he didn't want to be bothered with the 5 or 15-minute timeout when you leave your computer, right? So he disabled that for himself.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
Love those guys. Yeah.
Yeah. And speaking on changing mindsets, I also wanted to get Hajni's thoughts on the $50 million allocated by the U.S. Upgrade Act to study the feasibility of improving cybersecurity in healthcare. And they're specifically targeting things like auto updates and firmware updates for healthcare medical devices and the like. 50 million, think that's going to do anything?
No. Unfortunately, right? I think it goes a little bit, but the issue, and I might have mentioned this before too, is security through obscurity is a lot of the times for healthcare. A lot of the software that healthcare organizations buy are private companies who aren't public, so they don't have to release information, or they don't have to release their documentation or what have you, right? It's all paywalled. And that gets people to not understand the true like security issues. And then the other issue always is security versus convenience, and the buzzword is patient care impacting. And so if you ever deal with a healthcare customer or a healthcare provider or a doctor, or you know somebody of that sort, they always use the term, this is patient care impacting. And that means that I don't want to change, or I don't want something to change that may interrupt my workflow. So when I hear auto updates, I hear, oh no, this icon changed to green instead of red, and now
the
I
risk
have to
is
call
too
help
high.
desk. This is a thing that I have seen in the field, right? Like, oh, the icon changed. I don't know what this is anymore. I don't like it. And now, I need to call help desk, and the help desk is like, no, you're good. And like, well, this is patient care impacting, right? Like, I have a friend who runs an oncology department, and he's not in IT, he's not in security, he's just like a straight up like VP of oncology for a hospital. And he's like, I had somebody call me one day and said they couldn't get into the room where the paper towels were, and this was patient care impacting. They needed the key right away. And he was like, first off, why are you calling me? Second off, this isn't patient care impacting. There's like 4 other storage rooms that you could have went to that had paper towels in it. So I feel like that's some of the challenges. So I think that technology wise, I don't think that's where healthcare struggles. I think it's a lot of the personnel side of that, right? Like the people, not enough people to do the job is always a challenge, right? There's not enough nurses, there's not enough doctors, there's not enough IT staff for hospitals. I think pay is always kind of influencing that. Why would I work at a hospital making 50% less than what I could make somewhere else doing the same exact job? And so I think that the money is cool to research things like auto updates and stuff like that. But I think that where we're going to always struggle is like, can we simplify it so much that you don't have to worry about it? You don't have to think about it. It's not going to become like a full-time, like, I have to babysit this thing every day.
Well,
I just had a crazy thought.
Yeah.
Like,
go ahead,
I just
Chris.
had a crazy thought. Like, what if we move up the stack in nursing school and in med school? We teach a course in cybersecurity and why it's important. Cybersecurity is important in healthcare. Then maybe, the next generation of nurses and doctors will understand that, yes, it's important not to click on the link because bad stuff can happen. And then they won't get mad if the icon changes from like red to blue or whatever. And like, okay, I understand why that we need to do that, because if we don't update this, a lot of bad things can happen.
Is that one class for a whole semester or quarter, or is that just...
I don't know, Glenn. I just thought of it on the spot. I haven't planned out the course rubric.
It would be interesting if they just had training when they first joined the company, which they do.
Yeah, right? No, it makes sense, though. But I think it's also like a policy thing. So there was a CIO of a health system that I was doing on a different podcast. I don't even remember what podcast it was. And he was saying that for phishing things, what they do is they have a distribution list that you email that has the CEO on it. And the whole thing is like, if the CEO asks you to buy gift cards, you email this distribution list and you go, hey, just wondering if this is real or not, before you do anything else. But they've fostered a culture that instead of being scared to email the CEO, is like, no, email him, dude, like, whatever, who cares? And like, I guess he's responded many times before being like, no, like, this isn't real, like, this wasn't me, like, I didn't ask you to do this, or what have you. And I think that's also where we need to kind of shift that education, is like, don't be afraid to like talk to your superior person, because that's also where people get in trouble. Is like, oh, well, the CEO, like, it'd be like Jay Chaudhry, right, calling me randomly with like a deep fake and being like, hey, Stephen Hajny, I heard that you did such and such with this customer. I need you to go out and buy $2,500 worth of Walmart gift cards to send to them as a thank you gift. Please send them to this address. Like, I immediately would be like, nah, that's fake. Like, but
we should do that. We should send that to all the SEs at the company and see what they do.
Yeah, right? Like, I'm sure somebody would do it, and it wouldn't be a case of, like, they did it on purpose, or they did it because they had zero understanding. It was probably just like a fear thing. Like, oh, God, like, that's happening to me. Like, I have to get on that right now. I don't want him to be calling me again and asking me where it is. Like, I think we just have this this culture of fear that we just need to kind of like foster a culture of like, hey, just email people and see what's up, or call them. Like, I would just email Jay at that point, and be like, hey, Jay, like, I don't know, you may not ever answer me, but like, did you ask me to do this? And if you did, then you're probably going to answer.
Yep.
I don't think 50 million is enough. I'll be honest with you. 50 million could probably be spent by one large company alone.
Well, it's 50 million to conduct a study, so it's not 50 million to buy a bunch of
Great. We're wasting
DVDs.
even more money to study the
We're
fact that you
commissioning
do
a
need
study.
it. That you need it, right? It's not the fact that it's whether or not you should or shouldn't. You should. I don't understand this stuff. Like, the money that's spent on this is like, let's study to see if we need to impose better security controls. Dummy, you do. I could save you like $1 million right now, right? So
Well,
Just say yes.
I'm
you
just
need
$1
this.
million though. You'll take the 49.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll take the 49. Yeah.
I do think it's so accurate though, because we do see these studies. Like, I even have an ebook that I'm going through editorial stuff right now called the Zero Trust Hospital, and it's all about like how do you take somebody from zero knowledge of what zero trust is or security is in a healthcare organization and do best practices around zero trust, and like what does that look like. And so you could give me $50 million right now and I'll publish that, and hopefully that's your research because it has stats in it. But I think that's a thing, is like, oh yeah, no, we did $50 million and we found that you need better security. Case closed. Like, what do you do with the data now?
Yeah.
You know, is it? Yeah. So I think it's more money about remediation. I think we need definitely more talks around education and kind of changing the way we think about security in healthcare.
Yeah, I think healthcare is unique in that. I think like healthcare, I think financial services, probably both highly regulated. They think similarly. They both operate in the mindset of every second of downtime is like potentially millions in lost revenue, or like you said, patient impacting could impact the healthcare that they provide. So they're very averse to risk compared to other companies. I don't know, manufacturing maybe, or game makers. You know, if Rainbow Six goes down for an hour, yes, it sucks, but then I can't play. But it's not going to be, no one's going to die over it.
Yeah, that's the thing I always stress to coming over, is that like, hey, healthcare is extremely important in that sense. Like, your maintenance windows at 6 p.m. on a Friday, that may cover 95% of other companies, but for healthcare, they're always on, right? Like, they're always working. There's never like a moment of downtime. When you do change control for healthcare, it's like 2 a.m. and you still get the inevitable like 30 phone calls about how somebody couldn't log into certain things because it was down for a period of time. Like, it's inevitable. I used to see change control windows even get blocked for things at the Boston Marathon, right? Because like they're expected to have more ER visits during that time period, or even on like January 1, right, New Year's Eve. Like, hey, no change control because we're going to have an influx of ER visits, so there is nothing that you can do during that period of time.
Yeah. Alcohol poisoning, drug overdose,
Yeah,
car crashes.
anything. Yeah. All of the things.
All right, I think we'll skip topic 3 for now, because I think we're almost coming up on time, and we'll jump into our last topic. I thought this one would be pretty interesting, especially there might be a potential healthcare spin on it. So we'll skip to our last topic. For our last topic, and it'll be a rotating topic every week. This week we're going to talk about Americans and their alcohol. There's an article in the Wall Street Journal where they ask the question, do Americans drink too much? And alcohol is driving a new debate in Washington. To set the stage, for nearly 3 decades, the federal dietary guidelines have said it's safe for men to have 2 or fewer drinks a day, and for women to have 1 or fewer drinks per day.
Well, that's sexist.
And that could change next year when the U.S. federal government revises those numbers. So I'm going to take a pause there and say that this is a good thing. We should have guidelines for how much is too much. We see those alcohol ads, and they always say enjoy responsibly, but what is responsible? And I don't want my government telling me how much I can consume, but it's good to have that information of what a recommendation is. So currently, officials from the current Health and Human Services Department here in the U.S., they say no alcohol is okay. Our friends up there by Hashni in Canada says up to 15 drinks per week for men and 10 drinks per week for women is okay. The Center for Substance Abuse says 2 per week or less is okay. So we have we have a wide range here is the point. Where it gets interesting, as is everything with American politics, are the lobbyists. House and Senate representatives from the red state of Kentucky are lobbying for a higher number of permissible drinks for the obvious reason that Kentucky exports a lot of bourbon. On the other side of the country, in the very blue state of California, representatives for wine country Napa, Sonoma, and the San Joaquin Valley are also lobbying for higher limits for obvious reasons as well. So
does it really matter? I guess, like, if they say, hey, you should only have one drink a day or one drink a week, like, are people who are drinking going to really go, look, I checked out the dietary guidelines and they say I should have 3 gallons of milk a day and only one drink. Like, I can't imagine that that's like a thing that people are going to be concerned with. But I also see a rise of non-alcoholic beer. I don't know about you guys, but I know at least up in Maine, who, shameless plug, we had the most breweries per capita a couple of years back, we're seeing a lot more non-alcoholic beer come in. And it's mainly not just like your O'Doul's. It's like actual like craft non-alcoholic beer, and it's not bad. It's just, I find that the younger generation isn't as keen of like getting obliterated on a Saturday night and then like trying to drive home. Like they're more just like,
because they've been watching their parents get obliterated on a Saturday night.
Right? Exactly. That's it.
I think there's a few reasons for this. So you bring up a good point. So there's non-alcoholic alternatives. I think I saw an article recently that said, I might get the name wrong, the Atlantic Brewing Company. They're a really big non-alcoholic beer company. They just surpassed some craft brewery, or they hit some kind of milestone. This is for the first time ever non-alcoholic beer is outsold small craft beer, something like that. So I think that's one trend. The other trend is the legalization of recreational marijuana, which our parents did not have. It was not legal for recreational use then or the previous generation. And I think the stat was also, for the first time ever, millennials or Gen Z, I can't remember which one, more people recreationally use marijuana than recreationally drinking alcohol. So I think that's the other trend.
I believe it. I don't know about you guys. Like, I only drink now on the road when I'm traveling for customers, and it's really just because it's like the social norm is like the sales guy brings you out to insert customer here, and then you guys go out for drinks after, and you have a couple of bourbons or whatever, in my case, and then you go on your way. Whereas I don't,
and you continue to drink while you're driving too, right? So that
exactly. Yeah, while I'm in the Uber, I'm just I go, let me take the wheel. Actually, you're driving too slow.
Yeah. Open container laws, not in all 50 states.
So I just want to know, in the realm of equal whatever gender whatever, right? Do you guys notice that they snuck in there that men have this amount and women have this amount? But if you identify one way or another, does the number change, or is it just based off of that? Like I said, I'm scratching the surface here, and it may make some people upset. But the whole point here is what they're saying is men can have more and women can't. But for the women out there, are you guys really gonna accept that challenge? Are you guys gonna be okay with that?
Challenge accepted.
Do you think it's a body weight thing though? Like, I wonder if like the averages and it's based on body weight. Like, I don't think that's a cop out, right? Because I think that like they should just call it like they see it, as if it is like a woman versus man can only have so much or whatever. But I mean, like, I wonder if it is a average on body weight. Like, I can't imagine that alcohol consumption for a 300-pound man is going to be equivalent to the same as like a 100-pound female. I just don't know if that's like why they did it that way. I think it's just a weird thing. I think it just should be equal. Like, hey, 2 drinks across the board, call it a day. So
maybe we can get a doctor or something to weigh in here. But my take on it is similar to Hajni's line of thought, is that on average, and I'm just talking about average, not talking about the extremes, on average, men weigh more than women. Men have more muscle mass than women do. That's just a biological fact. I'm not saying men work out more or anything. It's just a biological fact. And even like federal dietary guidelines, I think everyone's heard 2,000 calories a day. That's an average. Again, in general, everybody should eat about 2,000 calories a day. But I think when you dive into it a little bit more, I think for men it's 2,500 calories a day, and for women it's like 1,800 or something like that. So, but they say on average everybody should eat about 2,000 calories per day, and that has to do with body weight and muscle mass, and that likely explains why it's more permissible on the federal level for men to consume more alcohol than women. But like you said, your mileage may vary. A larger woman versus a smaller man is going to be different, of course.
The scientific study that I tried out this last weekend, actually, because I was at a wedding, so I did have drinks. I brought a bottle of bourbon. Yeah, for science, I brought a bottle of Blanton's bourbon because I was told that we should bring our own hard alcohol,
nice.
And I wanted
Blanton's. Fancy.
Yeah, I wanted to share with my jiu-jitsu colleagues, right, or friends, and so my wife had a single drink and was definitely feeling it, and she has lost, I think it's like 120 pounds. She had lost all that weight from bariatric surgery, so she had one drink and she was definitely feeling a little bit more tipsy. I had about 5 or 6 drinks from bourbon, and I did not feel nearly as tipsy as she did on one. And I outweigh her now by at least 120 pounds, if not more. So who knows? It could be that, That's what. Yeah.
It's from all that practice that you had on the road, taking out customers.
Yeah, right. It's also part of it.
You built up that tolerance.
Yeah. But this goes to, like, really, is the government really going to get into my business again and tell me how much I should or shouldn't drink? I think that's what it comes down to. They're just trying to create another study that costs money that's worthless, right? Like, let me do what I want to do. If I want to have 5 drinks or
$60 million study is coming up soon. No.
Yeah, so I would say, in defense of the U.S. federal government, I think it's good to have recommended guidelines, because when, like, the whole nutrition label mandate, I think that's a good thing. People should know how many calories are in a bag of chips, and they should be able to make informed decisions. Like, don't ban me from buying too many chips, or don't tax my chips differently than you would tax, say, bread, but at least inform me of how many calories I'm shoveling down my throat when I eat a whole bag of Cheez-Its or something. And I think some of the Surgeon General guidelines, like for pregnant women, fetal alcohol syndrome, it's a proven thing. Like, if women drink while they're pregnant, it has a negative effect on the baby. We should have guidelines that say women should not consume alcohol while they're pregnant, or I don't know, whatever the permissible limit. Some say 0, some say a glass of wine a week. I don't know what it is. So I think there should be some guidelines, but I don't think it should be regulated.
I agree. But again, it's that sticky wicket, right? Guidelines are great. 90% of the world is going, 90% of the U.S. is going to abide by them. The rest of the 10 are just on each side, are just going to go through this. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and the parallel here. So we have the intersection of these recommendations, and then we have these lobbyists that are, of course, supporting their own interest. That reminds me of the advertisements for, like, military equipment. If you thumb through one of these magazines, these ads by, like, Boeing or Lockheed Martin, one of these defense contractors, they used to extol, like, how lethal or how smart their munitions were. But now they proudly feature on their ads what congressional district these things are made in, and what congressional districts they source parts from, and things like that, because that really determines where, if it's done in my district, of course I'm going to lobby for this company or this particular weapon.
That's some shady stuff. Lobbyists are some shady folks, man. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like, for things like healthcare, for the pharmaceutical industry, for even the alcohol industry, like, we can't get things passed just because the lobbyists are choosing financial regulation. Even, like, this isn't a left or right thing, but when, I think, prior to 2008, before Hillary Clinton was running for president, she was lobbying really hard for consumer protections against these banks. And then after she started getting paid, like $250,000 per speech to speak at these banks, she all of a sudden became, like, pro bank and anti-regulation. And it's just like, well, you have a stance, but it seems like for a price, people can change their mind. And that's the exact parallel in Congress. For a price, people can change their mind, and that price comes in the form of lobbyists.
Well, not only that, the laws they create are like double negatives to make the positive, right? It's like, you don't want this because of this, but you don't want this either. So how do you want, you should vote this way, but it's not negatively this impacting this way. And you're like, what are they saying? I don't understand. Like, write these things a little easier for the common person to understand without all these double or triple negatives, right?
Yeah. Indeed. That's why we can't get affordable pharmaceutical drugs here in the U.S. as well. Like the latest one is Ozempic, that GLP-1 drug that is a miracle for a lot of people that are struggling to lose weight. And here in the U.S. it's $1,200 a month for a month's supply. In Germany, it's $50. Why? Because Germany has laws on restricting how much they can charge. Therefore, they have to make it up somewhere else, which is in the U.S. where we don't have those laws and we can't pass those laws because the pharmaceutical industry is too powerful here.
I feel like is also part of the problem. Then we get into that whole like supply and demand thing too. Like I know Ozempic is one. So like I said, my wife had bariatric surgery, so she was on some weight loss medications beforehand, and it wasn't that one, but it was another one in particular. But it was like, hey, this is also used for diabetes, and then suddenly I knew like 30 other people who were getting Ozempic like given to them from their doctor, and it was people who I had known in previous instances to not struggle with weight loss, right? There wasn't any hormonal stuff going on. It was just like, hey, at some point I just kind of stopped, and then now it's like, oh well, now there's a short supply, so now we're going to charge you through the teeth. I know like my meds, I take ADHD meds, Vyvanse. Same thing. There wasn't a generic for a long time. Then there was a generic. Costs went down drastically. And then all of a sudden the generic was like, we have a shortage of supply. And so now we need to up the cost again. You can only get the brand name unless you want to wait like 4 months for a month's supply. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. And that was like, that's what I was thinking, right?
You can't go. You can go to Mexico and get them. A flight to Mexico is probably cheaper than waiting
across the border.
Or go to Canada,
yeah. Pay that cost.
See?
Yeah, that's crazy. There's the amount of lobbying going on here and how that interrupts the lawmaking process is just crazy to me. But I mean, that's the way the country works, unfortunately, until somebody comes in and drains the swamp. That's the way things are going to be.
That's it.
Anyways, all right, time to get off my soapbox.
Yeah, Chris. Stop that.
We continue to get great comments about our dad joke of the week.
Dad joke of the week.
This week, our guest Tajni is up.
Oh man, I'll give you 2 quick ones. So, what kind of trophy do you give someone who hasn't moved all year? Atrophy. Ha ha ha. And the other one is, why can't you trust an atom? Because they make everything up.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wah. 2 good, true dad jokes. All right, to wrap things up, delete Kaspersky. More needs to be done to protect U.S. healthcare from cyber attacks, and drink responsibly. That's all I have for this week. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. You can find all of us on LinkedIn. Links will be in the description. Follow us on Instagram at PEBCAK Podcast. Thank you to all the listeners and subscribers. Rate us 5 stars in the iTunes Store and Spotify, and left us a review. We appreciate you all spreading the word to help grow the show. The best way to find us is to search for the PEBCAK Podcast on your favorite podcast listening app. For my co-host Glenn Medina and our guest Tajni, I'm Chris Louie. Thanks for listening. We'll see y'all next week, and as always, have a nice day.
Bye, Felicia.
Cheers. America #1.
Have a nice day.